Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started.
Well, let's get this thing started, shall we? Episode 83 of Coach Bennett's podcast. That's right, 83. Let me just tell you a little something before we really get going about 1983. Do you know what happened for the first time in 1983? The Outdoor Track and Field World Championships took place. Oh yeah, they did. And if you want to watch some cool races, the women's 1500 and 300, epic. Men's 5K, epic. You're going to want to watch both of those, okay? Because they are extraordinary, my friends. That's right. The first year of the World Championships. Isn't that crazy? I mean, think about that, rolling calendar year. You had the first World Championships in 83, followed by the 84 Olympics in LA, which from a, track and field perspective, I think we're just out of this world. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. 1983. There's also some really great music in 1983 that kind of bleeds into 84, and you've heard me before say that 1984 was the best year for pop music ever, because it was. So anyway, 83, 84 kind of in tandem. Unbelievable. 85, a pretty good year too, I must say. But I guess I'm putting a little pressure on myself for this episode, considering how awesome I'm equating 83, with, I guess, just the term awesomeness in my mind. So it makes sense that this episode is called Best Year Ever. It also makes sense because I'm literally recording it on January 1st. Yeah, so if you want like a little bit of the screen pulled back of, what Coach Bennett's podcast is like, and it's like, oh, is he recording a whole bunch of these, ahead of time, and is he taking an incredible amount of time to edit them? And I imagine there's a lot of production behind it. Nope. I'm gonna basically record this on my computer, and I'm hiding in one of my kids' rooms because that's where it's quiet. And for the most part, if the dogs start barking at a squirrel, you're not going to hear that. And there's so many people walking around the house, so I can't really do it just anywhere. So I'm doing it in one of the kids' rooms. And if suddenly there's like an abrupt, I gotta go, that's because they found me and I have to shut down the entire apparatus that I'm using, which is just a microphone and a laptop. And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to edit it with headphones on while I'm probably watching the Knicks game. That's probably how it's going to work. There it is. That's the production. It's pretty intense. It's pretty amazing, right? There's a lot of moving parts. There's really 2 moving parts, and that's it. I don't even know if that qualifies as a machine. But anyway, what is probably the machine that would be, defined as a machine that has the least amount of moving parts and still fulfills something, completes some type of a job? That's not really that interesting of a question, so we're just going to move on. Okay, the name of this episode is Best Year Ever. Now, this is what I want you to get out of this, okay? I'm going to kind of jump ahead to the end. I want you to leave this episode feeling like this year could be, can be, just might be your best year ever, and in doing so, I hope you also realize you've already had not just a best year ever, you've had many best years ever, which is why the first thing that I talk about today is believe that this year can be a best year ever, can be the best year ever, can be one of your best years ever. Because a lot of times when I bring this up with athletes and say, hey, listen, let's sit down, let's talk about this season, let's talk about this race, let's talk about this year, and I say, how do we make this your best race ever, your best season ever, your best year ever? The first thing they think about is just how titanic a task this is going to be to fulfill any of those possibilities. And, I like breaking it down so the athlete sees it's not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean it's too hard to do. This could be your best race ever, your best season ever. This could be your best year ever. And it's important to remind them that you've had this happen before many, many, many times. So that's just something to think about here right off the bat is, can you believe that it can be your best year ever? Okay? Let's just start from that place. And if you're having a hard time wrapping around it because you're thinking about where you are right now, which is important. It's important to know where you are, where the starting line is. It's also important to remember that a year is 365 days long, sometimes 366, and there are going to be lots and lots of starting lines, potentially thousands, tens of thousands, millions of starting lines that you're going to cross over the course of 1 year. So don't get all wrapped up into where this one specific starting line is, which I'm imagining most of you out there are thinking from a physical point of view, where you are on January 1st. And that is overwhelming you for whatever reason, and you're thinking, there's just no way, I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in 365 days to, let me guess, go further or faster than you've ever gone before. So I guess other than believing that it can be the best year ever, what I also want you to do is broaden the definition of best beyond just fastest and furthest. Now, don't get me wrong. Those are wonderful ways to measure best when it comes to running, but they are not the only ways to measure or quantify or define a performance, a season, or a year when it comes to running. It's okay for you to say, I want to run my fastest, and I'm going to equate that as my best 5K in 2025. Okay, but we have to just do a 20-second timeout here. Let me just tell you that there are a lot of different ways to measure your best 5K beyond how many seconds it took to cover 5,000 meters in distance, right? All right, so as long as we're on the same page there, I think we understand that it is beneficial to us as both athletes and coaches to define best as more than just how fast we covered a certain distance. That can be one of the measurements, but believe me, it is not the only measurement, and it should never be the only measurement. Okay? Fantastic. Because when we do that, we are immediately inviting more success into our life. Because when we can measure success, when we can measure best as many ways as possible, we suddenly have more ways to be our best, more ways to achieve success. I wish I could keep this going with some rhyming here because, I think that would hit so hard if I just had a few more lines in there, just boom, 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 but I don't, so we're moving on. All right, you've heard me say it before, measure success as many ways as you can. That's really important, and it's a great thing to do here at the beginning of the year. January 1st can be January 2nd, can be January 3rd. By the way, you can come back and listen to this, and it can become the best rest of the year. It's okay when you do this. It could be a rolling year. It could be June to June. It doesn't have to be a calendar year. So just think about, first and foremost, do you believe this could be your best year ever? And then the next thing I want you to do is think about all the different ways you can measure that. So yes, if you are someone who says, well, this year I really want to run my fastest marathon. I really want to run my furthest distance in a row without stopping, or you can define it. That's the point. If you're thinking to yourself right now, oh, no, those are neither of the ways I'm going to do it. In fact, the ways I'm going to measure it are this and this. Great. Have as many as you possibly can. Just keep putting them down on a piece of paper or on your phone. Write them down somewhere. If you have a typewriter, it's even cooler. mistakes and all. There's something about just the clickety-clack of a typewriter. Oh, I don't know what it is, but it just makes you feel like you're getting stuff done. Anyway, just something to think about. All right, that's all I'm saying. Write down all the different ways you can measure success. All right, all the different ways you can define best. These are things that you're going to want to have with you throughout this journey, this lap around the sun. All right, now, couple things that you should also be writing down there or just making a mental note of. Remember, best does not mean perfect. All right? Best does not mean perfect. I'm going to tell you why. And this is always really important for me when I was talking to athletes and coaching teams, because perfect doesn't exist. Okay, so that's number one. Best does. See, I believe best exists. I just don't believe perfect exists. I don't think there's a perfect race. I don't think there's a perfect training plan. I don't think there's a perfect stride. I don't think there's a perfect run. Because I just think when you do that, you're limiting ever being better than that. You're what you're saying is every aspect of this is the best it can ever be. You can't become more perfect than perfect. And what you're doing is you're robbing yourself of all those different measurements of success. So you could have a race that was your best race ever based on time. But strategy-wise, you could say, yeah, I made a few mistakes in there. So maybe I'd never run 3K faster than that. But there was a different race where I ran a much better strategy, or I was much tougher mentally, or I was much more proud of how I handled a tough situation. When you do something and you say, it's perfect, that means every aspect of it cannot be improved upon. I don't like that at all. I mean, and believe me, it's not just a feelings thing, because it just perfect doesn't exist. But if it did exist, oh, geez, that would be kind of a letdown as a coach, I got to be honest, because we'd have to have that talk where I'd say, listen, bub, that's it. That's as good as it ever gets, because that was perfect. You're never, ever going to do any aspect of this better than what you just did. There are no more mountains to climb. There are no more hurdles to get over. There are no more barriers to break down. There are no more struggles to be had that will lead you to anything beyond what you just did. Oh, perfect is boring. Perfect sucks. So just know, as you're setting these goals, as you're defining what best can be, remember, perfect should not be one of the goals. Because one, it's unattainable, but it just doesn't exist, all right? And it gets in the way, and it's boring as hell. So remember that, all right? Now, here's a couple of things that I also like to do with athletes when we're getting in this, like, kind of sweet spot of the conversation where we're like, okay, we've got some momentum now, right? Like, we believe that we can have a best year ever, a best race ever. We can have a best training cycle ever, a best season ever, a best team ever, all of these different things. Like, okay, this is really cool. We've defined so many different ways we're going to measure all the elements of best and success around these goals, right? Around this year, around this season. We've done that. We know that best doesn't mean perfect. So we've scooted that off to the side, right? Like, we've gotten rid of that aspect of perfection, that stuffy, just boring concept of perfect. So you know what we do now? Well, we don't do what the athlete usually wants to do. The athlete wants to talk about all the stuff they're not doing. I don't like to start there. I like to start by talking about, what are you already doing? Let's do that. Let's talk about what you're already doing. Because what can happen is, as you start talking about having a best year ever, the first thing most people do is they think about everything they're not doing that they need to do. And suddenly they have a day that they're already living. that's filled up with stuff they're already doing, and now they're trying to find like every nook and cranny and crevice to squeeze in more stuff. And that can get very, very tense and disheartening and overwhelming really quickly. So what I like to do is I like to say, let's forget about all the cracks in the corners where we can maybe jam new stuff in. Let's talk about what you're already doing. And let's celebrate some of the things you're already doing and just commit to continuing to do what you've already been doing consistently. Sound good? Great. Now, this is maybe initially to athletes a boring part of the conversation. Because I may say something like, all right, well, tell me a little bit about, like, when you wake up in the morning, what do you do? And some people will be like, oh, my mornings are great. I don't have a problem getting out of bed for the most part, and when I do, I just look forward to the fact that I'm going to have this delicious cup of coffee. So I go out and I start making the coffee, and while I'm making the coffee, what I do is I down a pint of water, because I remember you, Coach, you're such a good guy, and I say, stop it. This isn't about me, this is about you, but thanks for calling me a good guy. They say, I remember you once said, before you have a cup of coffee, have a pint of water, it'll change your life, and it has, so thank you so much. And I say, stop it, just stop it. Jesus isn't about me, but thank you. And they'll say, but it has, it's dramatically changed my life, and you're wise, and you're so handsome. And I'm like, all right, this is getting awkward, but not so awkward that I want you to stop. But anyway, the point is, they'll say, you know what, I wake up in the morning, and I have a really nice routine where I have some water, I have some coffee, I make a nice little breakfast, and I read, and it's a great way to start the day. And I'll say, stop. Great. Keep doing that. That's awesome. Because starting your day a great way, starting your day a right way, which means a way where you're easing into the day, you're giving yourself some grace to go from sleeping to not sleeping, and you're really happy because you're sitting down, you've had some water, you've had a bite to eat, you've had a coffee, and you're reading, and you feel like, okay, this is the best way for you to launch this new experience, this experiment that will be today. I love it. I love it. So don't change a thing. Do you know how nice it is to know, hey, I get to keep doing what I'm doing if I want to get closer to a best year ever, as opposed to everything needs to change? No, not everything needs to change. So let's talk about the things that don't need to change, because then we're adding nothing new. Nothing at all. I mean, if you think about all the stuff you do every single day or most days as just like rocks in a backpack that you're carrying around, and I'm saying, hey, we're going to set some goals, and the only thing I do is add more and more rocks to your backpack. That's the only part of the equation. Or I say, let's take out a smaller rock and put in a bigger rock. Like oh my gosh. As opposed to saying, like, how does it feel right now? These rocks. Okay, well, some of these rocks are really good. We're going to keep them in there. We don't need any bigger rocks. So if that rock representing your morning, that's great. It's not going to get any heavier, all right? What a relief. Like, okay, I can do that. And I know I can do that because I've been doing it, right? So that's the first thing I want you to do, is I want you to think about all the things you already do that are good. All the things you already do that are going to help you get closer to achieving your goals. All the things you're already doing that are going to help you achieve the successes that you want to achieve in 2025. Go through them, right? You know, Coach Tammy has a gratitude journal that she writes in every single night for years and years and years and years and years. And it's a great way for her, before she goes to sleep, to think about some really good things going on in her life, things that she's thankful for. It's a great way to launch her into the dreamscape that is, you know, nighttime. Because what can happen is, at the end of the day, and you can just kind of get overwhelmed by the day that was and the day that is yet to be. And sometimes it's really good just to take a moment and think about, okay, I've got a lot going on. What am I thankful for? That's something she does. So that would be something to say, hey, guess what? Keep doing that. That's a good thing. It's also a great exercise to remind yourself of how many things you're already doing that are pretty badass, right? Like, well, I consistently run. Okay. And guess what we're going to do in 2025? We're going to consistently run. How cool is that? Like, that's amazing that you're already doing that. That's a huge part of this. That's a big hurdle to get over. If your running goal, well, if you have a running goal and you're not running, that's a bunch of rocks we got to put in that backpack. But if you're already running consistently, whoo, baby, that's huge. Celebrate that. Take some time as we're looking ahead to look back and think of all the things that you're doing, all the things that you've done that you're going to continue to do. They're going to help you get closer to where you want to be, right? So take the time to celebrate by thinking of the stuff you're already doing. Then I want you to think about all the stuff you could be doing less of. Oh yeah, now we're going to make some room. We're going to make some room. We're going to get some rocks out of your bag. So again, before we start thinking of stuff that we're adding, we're going to start thinking of stuff we can take away. Things that aren't helping you. Things that aren't getting you closer to achieving success. Things that aren't helping you accomplish all the things you want to accomplish. So come up with a list, and believe me, we've all got these lists, right? What are the things you could be doing less of? Like, for instance, I was telling Coach Tammy, I said, I'm trying to get less upset in the car at terrible drivers. Because it doesn't really help anything. I'm not saying if somebody's doing something wildly dangerous, not notifying them with a honk to try to keep them safe or other people on the road safe. No, what I'm saying is if somebody's not letting me in, there's really no point in having a 45-second, very aggressive conversation with myself and no one else in my car that's only stressing me out and getting me angry. There's just no reason. There's no reason to do that. So if I can do less of that and just take a few breaths, maybe sing the song that's on the radio, I'm going to have less negative stress in my life. Negative stress, which can exhaust me. Negative stress that can weaken my immune system. Negative stress that is causing me to not enjoy more of this finite amount of time that I have on this rock. I'd much rather sing the song I'm listening to than have a 45-minute imaginary conversation with what I'm considering to be a complete, how shall I put it, less than stellar driver that I don't know, that can't see me, that isn't listening to anything I'm saying. So just sing the song, right? Take a few breaths, sing the song, get home safely. I will run better if I do this consistently. I'll be a better dad if I do this consistently. I'll be a better husband if I do this consistently. I'll be a better driver if I do this consistently. And what am I doing consistently? Doing something less or not at all. So think about the things in your life that you could be doing less of. Take some of those rocks out of your bag that you don't need, okay? And you know what I'm thinking of now, this metaphor? We should be having things in our bag that aren't all rocks. So what I should have done was at the beginning, imagine you've got a bag of stuff that you need to achieve what you want to achieve. So that first stuff is like, things that you are already doing. That could be like, your water, some food, maybe some pictures of people you care about. Keep those in there. They're already in the bag. This is so much better. This is so much better. And if I edited my podcast more, I would probably go back and change this, but I think it's probably good for you to see when I realize, you know what? The story would have worked. This works better. Why are we carrying around a bag of rocks? So I guess right now what I'm doing is I'm taking the rocks out of the bag because they don't help. So this is so much better. See, this is editing in real time without taking anything out. You know what I mean? Or just correcting my mistakes, improving upon. So you're kind of getting like the first draft and the second draft and then the final draft, which is still a draft. But anyway, the point is, to make this metaphor work, what we're doing now, which is way better than what we were doing before, is we're figuring out what we need to bring on this journey that we already have with us, right? Bag's getting no heavier. Then what we're doing is we're taking out stuff that is not making this journey any easier, any better, and in fact is making it worse. It's slowing us down, and it's keeping us from potentially reaching where we want to go. So we're looking for them rocks. And for me, one of the rocks is getting upset about stuff that I don't need to be getting upset about. Inviting stress into my life that I don't need, that I don't benefit from, in fact, only makes me worse. What are some of those things that you do? Like, are you not having a pint of water in the morning? Are you going straight to the coffee? That's not something that's going to make this easier. If you're sleeping 7 hours, that's 7 hours without anything to drink. And then the first thing you're going to do when you wake up is have coffee instead of a water. So have the water, then have the coffee. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So you can find things in your life that you're doing that aren't helping. Get rid of them or adjust them so now it's helping you. All right? So what can you be doing less of or none of to improve the possibility that we are going to have a best year ever? Then I want you to think about, what are you not doing at all that you should be doing? Now we can start adding stuff to the bag, because what have we done? We've kept in there the essential items. We've taken out the negative items. We've got some room now. How cool is that? We now have room. We have room to put in things that we need that we don't have. All right, now we're cooking. So what are some things that you're not doing that you could be doing? Like, I just used, the fact of you waking up after 7 hours of sleep. Now, you've heard me say before, I don't like when people say, well, you have to get X amount of sleep, because not all of us have that type of, freedom to just add hours of sleep to our lives. Maybe we can find a little bit of time that could be spent sleeping that we're not using right now, sure. But I'm not going to play that game. So I'm just going to say you've got the sleep that you've got, all right? If you can find more, good for you. But if you can't, if 7 hours is like, that's it, that's the max amount of sleep I'm going to be able to get, fantastic. Well, you know what you could do? Make it better. You could make it better. And how do you make it better? Well, there's a whole episode on how you can sleep better. You can just listen to that. But that would be something you add to the bag. It would be a darker room, a colder room, a night mask, a routine to make that part of your day, which, by the way, let me just pause here for a second. Sleeping we sleep on sleep. Like, if there's something for you to look at this year, all right? Like, I'm not going to rank like the most important things, but I'll tell you what, recovery is kind of like the most important thing. And I think it has been for the last couple of years, and I don't think people are getting enough of it. I still don't think we've all recovered from COVID, and COVID's still around. But this isn't about that. This is just about the emotional exhaustion that we've all gone through over the last few years. We haven't recovered. We haven't. And I think if recovery is one of the most important, if not the most important things for you to look on your list of most important things in 2025, you're going to have a better chance at having a great 2025. So sleep is where we recover best. So if you can make your sleep better, you're going to have your best chance of having your best year. You've also heard me say great running is dependent on great recovery. Well, your greatest recovery happens when you sleep. Sleep better, you'll run better. All right? And this is about running, and this is not about running. So think about the stuff that you're not doing at all and start adding that in there. For me, I've mentioned a number of times, like my Achilles heel is planning my runs. I don't plan my runs. If I plan my runs, I would absolutely have better runs. No doubt about it. Absolutely, I would have better runs. And if I have better runs, I'm going to feel better about myself. And this isn't like me saying faster or further runs. It's just the stress around unplanned runs. What inevitably happens is I find this is the time when I have to run now because my back's against the wall. And it's almost always not as far as I want it to be. It's not as long as I want it to be. Or maybe it was. Maybe I was only going to run for half an hour today, but now since my back is against the wall and I'm in the corner and I'm thinking I only have 30 minutes to run, I look at it as I only have 30 minutes to run, which is not a great way to look at it. I should look at it as, hey, I've got 30 minutes to run. That's awesome. So I will suddenly diminish my run because of poor planning. It's wild. It's crazy, but it happens. And if you do that 100 times a year, you're missing out on some really positive associations mentally, emotionally, mindfully you would have made with your run had you looked at it a different way. So think about some of the things you're not doing at all. Put those things in your backpack, because now we've made some room, because remember, we ditched all of those rocks that were in there. And just like I said, I'm just going to say it again, rest and recovery, better rest and recovery. It doesn't have to be more, but it might be, but better rest and recovery in 2025. The other thing I want to remind you is just how long the year is. It's 365 days. That's 52 weeks. That's a lot of time. So don't get stuck on day one being the most important day. Day one is only the most important day if it's today. And that's only because it's the only day. But there has to be some faith that there are more days after this. All right? So yes, you will hear me say today's the most important day, because it's the only day we can work with. The athlete you are today is the most important athlete, because it's the only athlete I can work with. Today is the most important day because it's the only one that we can shape. It's the only one we have an active participatory role in. The past, that's over. It's done. It's behind us. The future, we never play with the future. We don't. By the time it arrives, it's back to just being today. So you can set yourself up potentially with the opportunity of being in a certain position in the future, but that will always be dependent on what you do today. So remember, the year's 365 days. So this is where that leap of faith comes in. Today's the most important day, okay? But we have to have the faith, the belief that we are going to get to a future today. And that's why today does not need to overwhelm us. This is a long road, a very long road. Remind yourself that in order to have a best 2025 or a best season, it's going to be a whole lot of today's, even more these hours that we're in, even more these minutes we are in, even more these seconds and moments that we are in. So don't discount the importance of today, but also don't give it more power than it needs. A lot of people get stuck on the starting line on day one because they're not as good in their mind as the person they want to be on day 365. And what they don't realize is the reason why is because we're not there yet. You're not that person yet. So don't compare yourself to someone you're not. Right? Seems pretty obvious. Compare yourself to who you are today. What can this athlete do today? What are you capable of today? Because if you keep working with that athlete, the one you are, if you keep doing what you're capable of, if you keep trying your best, which, by the way, if you try your best, you're at your best. Remember, that has something to do with the present, not the past, not the future. If you keep doing that, though, someday down the road, when it becomes the present, but right now is the future, you will be where you want to be. So, don't be overwhelmed by what's happening on the starting line. Keep reminding yourself how long this year is. What's the point? I kind of want to end with that. What's the point? It's good at the end of the exercise. It's good here at the end, after we've gone through all of these things, to then ask yourself, like, why? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to have this best year? And why are you defining your bests in these different ways? Why are you measuring success in all of the ways that you're measuring? Why are you trying to do this? What's the point? And you should have a lot of different answers. I hope you have a lot of different answers. Sit there until you have a lot of different answers, because you're going to lose sight of why a couple of times during the year, during the season. It's going to happen. That's fine. But come back to your why. But it should be whys. There should be plural. Like I said, it shouldn't be just because I want to run the fastest 5K I've ever run. Okay, then just dig deeper on that. Why? Well, because it's a challenge. Okay, well, if you get sick, if you get hurt, if the weather's really hard for a couple of weeks and the training can't be what you want it to be, and it looks like you're not going to run the time that you wanted to run, remember the reason why you wanted to run that time was because of the challenge. The challenge, my friend, still remains. The time may not be on the table, but I'll tell you what, the challenge is. So embrace that part. Not all of your whys have gone. A whole bunch still remain. And it doesn't mean that other why, if you hold on to these whys, can't come back. So know your why. Know the point of all of this. If you can do that, if you can do all of these things, believe that it's a possibility and define what that means by measuring success as many ways as you can, remembering that best doesn't mean perfect, and think about and celebrate the good stuff that you're already doing, right? And think about the stuff that you can stop doing that isn't helping you, that's hindering you from achieving these goals, from thinking about what you're not doing at all right now that you should be doing, that you could be doing, that you want to be doing, because it's going to lead to a better you, a stronger you, a more confident you. Focusing on getting the rest and recovery you need so you can do these things. I'll tell you what, if you think about it, this may be the coolest part of all of the shows that I give you is, hey, you need to learn how to rest and recover better, and think about all the different ways that you can rest and recover. I mentioned sleep being the best, but laughing, getting rid of toxic people in your life, dealing with stress better. All of these things are awesome, and make you feel better and make you stronger, give you greater endurance, improve the quality of your life. We're talking about rest and recovery, y'all. So these are the things that you need to do. Remember how long the year is and know your whys. If you can do all this, you got a really good chance of having your best year ever, or potentially having your best race ever, no matter how you define it. Having your best season ever. Yeah. Now, after this conversation, then we would start talking numbers. Then we would start talking training plan. Then we would start talking about the recovery runs and the long runs and the type of tempo runs we're going to start with and how we're going to incorporate fartlek and strength training. None of that stuff matters until we got through this. We had to get through this. And what happens is so many people go straight to the numbers and the distances and the paces and the workouts. I'm going to do 8x400 and I'm going to do tempo runs. I'm going to run 5 days a week, and my long run's going to get up to 20 miles or 20K or 90 minutes, whatever. They never dealt with this other stuff. And then they don't have anything close to their best happen, and they wonder why. But I focus so much on the numbers. But don't you understand there's a human being trying to do those things? And you take everything human out of the training. It has to start with the humanity. The training has to start with the humanity. If you can do that, there's a much better chance that human is going to be able to do something extraordinary. But you're not trying to code or do software. I'm not a computer guy, so I'm trying to figure out like the best way to describe this, but I think you get it. I think you get what I'm saying. You don't start with the numbers. You start with the person who's going to have to do all those things. It's not about the distance. It's not about the duration. It's not about the pace. It's about the human being that's going to have to run those minutes, those meters, those miles, and those speeds. Start with that person. They're the ones that'll finish the job. All right? So there it is. There's episode 83, folks. The first one of 2025. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you share the episode. I do. I hope you share the episode with teammates and family and friends, anyone you think needs some support, some help in 2025, trying to achieve their best, whether it's their best season, their best run, their best anything. Because remember, they get to define what it means. Share it with them. And if you want to, tag me, and I'll celebrate them for trying. Because remember, for us to be at our best, we have to try our best. All right, that's the show. Thank you for listening. And until next time, you take care of yourself, take care of each other. I'll meet you on that next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you haven't already subscribed or set yourself as a follower to the podcast, I really hope you would. And make sure you check out the show notes, because in those show notes, you're going to find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter and all the social media sites I'm on, like Instagram and Threads and Cameo and Blue Sky and Nope, not on that one anymore. So all the ones I am on, you're going to find it in the show notes, so check that out as well. And as always, thank you again for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast. Until next time, you keep taking care of yourself and each other.